Metal Slug was made in 1996 in Japan. The game basically ripped off Rambo, with its bandana-wearing one-man run-and-gun show, and was a huge arcade hit, with its simple 2D side-scrolling explosive action. Basically, it was the old blood and guts routine, with your character blasting anything that moves from enemy troops to helicopters, tanks, and huge end-of-level war machines that soak up bullets for fun. As well as your pistol and grenades, you can wield shotguns, flamethrowers, and of course the heavy machine gun. This game is brilliant. It's cartoon, comic book style graphics and non-stop action. It's a perfect mix. However, the game is tough, with enemy bullets filling the screen in all directions. Thankfully, you can always jump in your SV-001, known as the Metal Slug. This armoured vehicle packs a punch and can protect you from enemy fire, as long as it lasts. But as you fight your way through each level, you have to rescue POWs in the process, as well as dodging bullets from all sides. Metal Slug is as simple as it is difficult. Like all arcade games, it's designed to drain your money. But even on home console, the game is still tough as old army leather boots. One thing I love about Metal Slug games is the end of level bosses, and Metal Slug has its fair share of creative looking badass railguns, tanks and gunships. And this array of heavy metal packs a real punch. The game has 6 levels, which are more than enough considering the difficulty of the game, and unlike the sequels which add a supernatural element, Metal Slug just focuses on enemy troops, tanks and planes, helicopters and gunships, whereas the other games introduce zombies, mummies and vampire bats, aliens and giant robots, which in my opinion makes the game even better, but there's none of that here. And that doesn't hurt this game, because the original was highly impressive in its day, with its fast run and gun, all action, non-stop style. Metal Slug became an instant hit, and in many ways it's become the ultimate 2D shooter, sporing multiple sequels and creating a legacy of spent shell casings, piles of grenade pins as well as endless body bags. Metal Slug is not a thinking man's game, it's all about dodging bullets and bombs, but considering the age it was made in, it's an all-time classic, which has been copied so many times that I've lost count. These days we've got games like retro classics like Huntdown, which despite a cover system and a few improvements, still tries to copy that balls out style and explosive action of Metal Slug. The Metal Slug game and its style was heavily influenced by the films of the 1980s. Films like Rambo and Commando showed muscle-bound one-man heroes taking down entire waves of enemy armies all by themselves. Metal Slug might have been made in the 90s, but there's no doubt it was heavily influenced by the films of the 1980s. Everything was bigger in the 80s. The hair, the shoulder pads, the guns, the explosions, the muscles. And the 1980s action heroes took out entire waves of enemy soldiers all by themselves. And there's no doubt the Metal Slug is heavily influenced by those films. That's the thing about the 80s. It was all big bangs and full-on action. And the games were no different to the movies. In fact, in the 80s, we all grabbed our heavy machine gun and prepared for action. When it comes to arcade classics, if Streets of Rage is the quintessential 2D beat-em-up, then you have to argue that Metal Slug has to be the quintessential 2D shoot-em-up. Metal Slug is one of the greatest arcade games of all time. I mean, it still looks great today, so imagine how great it looked back in 1996. But its 2D run and gun style was spectacular back then. We all loved a bit of the old blood and guts routine. Metal Slug may look very macho and American, but it was made by the Japanese. And you can kind of tell that by the fact that you've got cartoon monkeys running about. But Metal Slug shows how heavily Western culture influences Japanese game making, especially when it comes to war games. I mean, Metal Slug looks so macho and American and that, but when you see a monkey running around with a machine gun, you know that's the quirky Japanese humour that is in all their games. In fact, if you ever feel like being Rambo for half an hour, you can't beat playing Metal Slug. It really is the ultimate action game. I give it 90 out of 100.